Good afternoon or evening, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical forecast and discussion here by Adrian's Weather Forecast. And it's going to be another update here on rapidly developing and strengthening Hurricane Larry, as it is now a Category 2 hurricane and likely to get as strong as a Category 4 out to sea hurricane, just like last year, what we saw with Hurricane Teddy, which was 140 miles an hour. We're watching out for a very significant and overall extreme hurricane. However, thankfully, it will not affect any land. However, we may have to watch out for Bermuda to get some effects here, considering the overall large and symmetrical wind field that we are expecting here as the storm continues to strengthen. Up to the point where it's just to the east of Bermuda. So Bermuda may have to get may go under a tropical storm watch, really just depending on how close the storm actually gets close to Bermuda. However, it's likely that the thing does get extremely close to Bermuda. However, it looks like it may spare the overall area. However, again, we still can't rule out the possibility for a Bermuda landfall. So here's a look at the overall National Hurricane Center advisory here. And there it is at 100 miles an hour. They're sitting as a Category 2. And now minimal center pressure at 978 millibars. So this pressure is continuing to drop here. And so now moving west-northwest as of 16 miles an hour. But as it continues to rapidly strengthen here and overall develop a clear eye within the next 24 hours or so, it's going to start steering here towards the northwest and then do north and then east northeastward as a result of that ridge is steering here, and as will overall the trough sitting up here on the east coast, kind of pushing the storm here obviously eastward, as well as that ridge kind of pushing it eastward as well. So thankfully the setup should prevent a Bermuda landfall or any landfall whatsoever. However, again, we still can't rule out the possibility for a Bermuda landfall as the track still very uncertain after the next, I'd say 2 or 3 days from, or at least the next 2 or 3 days. And that's at the point where actually guess where's Bermuda. That's going to be a question whether it's going to just bring in the outer wall, and the outer band, or actually get hit dead on. Obviously, it's very unlikely it gets hit dead on, but again, we can't rule the possibility. Let's take a look at the overall advisory slash discussion we have with this. And again, the National Hurricane Center is predicting a 140-mile-an-hour peak here within the next 48 hours and continuing throughout 60 hours and then weakening back to 130 and then 120 within the next around 5-ish days or so, but likely to become a major hurricane by the next 24 hours or so, maybe sooner than that, considering its current rate of strengthening and organization. This could very well become a Hurricane Teddy-like system. But here's now look at the overall discussion here. So we are looking at overall a very good chance for continuing to see rapid intensification here. So the latest track reasoning remains unchanged, with Larry being steered to the west-northwest around the southerly overall region here, the mid-lower ridge centered north of the hurricane, which we kind of see the overall increased amount of vertical shear kind of steering the system um, because the ridge is quite large. Even as its axis shifts eastward, the portion of the ridge will still remain to the north of the storm. And so obviously it continues to keep the storm from going anywhere westward, directly westward towards the United States or even Bermuda. The end result is that Larry should want only slowly gain a more poleward component of motion as the system gradually slows down. While the track guidance spread remains small for the first 48 to 60 hours of the forecast, a bit more overall longitudinal spread becomes apparent thereafter. Uh, but it's basically what the overall National Hurricane Center has to say, basically. So it's basically overall the summary there. It's basically saying how the ridge is keeping the storm kind of going due westward and steering it basically west northwestward, basically where it is now. 12Z European run has a distinctly stronger ridge oriented more poleward in a comparison to the 12Z GFS. Thus, it is not surprising to see that the European track is a bit further west and slower than the GFS. The latest National Hurricane track for the forecasted cycle was also adjusted a bit slower following the TVCN and ACCA consensus aids. Basically, they did push just a teeny bit, teeny bit westward due to the overall European having a bit more of a stronger ridge here. So obviously, if we have a stronger ridge in this case, we'll be seeing more of a westward, overall west northwestward effect. But due to the ridge being overall very weak here, the southerlies and obviously easterlies that come within the southern portion of the high pressure will be quite weak. allowing for less of a westward steering overall. So again, looking at overall, there could be a chance, obviously, to continue to see some overall rapid intensification here. Um, However, the earlier microwave data also suggested that there were a lot of concentric bands outside of the primary eye wall. So we are looking at overall potential concentric eye wall developing here within the system, aiding to the overall chance for eye clearance to remain a possibility within the next 24 hours or so. So here's another look at the overall satellite imagery here on Hurricane Larry. So there it is. It's trying to develop an eye there. Overall, good amount of overall extreme inflow developing here on the eye wall. They're quite overall symmetrical in its shape here. A very intense convection continuing to become visible on the southern portion of the system. As a really good outflow channel developing here within the system, you kind of see the overall tropical look. Really good divergent clockwise outflow within the cirrus and cumulus clouds stretching out in the upper level anticyclone. So overall, good amount of convection there as well. As well, again, seeing some strong inflow, allowing for that sharp overall, I guess, difference between the actual outer banding and the actual IWA itself. But let's look at the outflow itself here. Really good outflow channels. I mean, this is an absolutely beautiful storm here, especially considering it's legit in the middle of the MDR. We typically do not see storms like this develop so quickly and so soon. Overall, advanced so much in the MDR like that. We have not seen something like this since 2017 with, I'd say, probably Irma, Maria, or Jose. Basically, obviously, Harvey took a little bit while to actually get its act together, and Harvey did not become a big threat to the actual Gulf of Mexico. Well, Maria, Jose, and obviously Irma became a pretty big component as early as the central MDR, specifically Jose itself and Maria. And then Irma kind of went really crazy, kind of slowly last minute here. But overall, really good storm right now. I mean, Larry is just an absolute monster. No lightning really developing in the center yet. However, as we continue to go on, lightning is getting a little bit closer to the actual IWA itself. But again, really strong amount of outflow. Overall, good cumulus, good channel, outflow channels going on. Overall, so it is going through an eye wall replacement cycle, so I would not doubt this thing has an absolute beautiful looking eye wall later tonight here. Probably even a chance for clearance as it goes, maybe throughout a diurnal maximum as the atmosphere continues to cool off and seeing further development of these convection bursts. However, if it does clear an eye before the diurnal maximum, it'll most likely kind of get eaten up by those convection bursts here, but that's not likely to occur here. Overall, looking at the overall water vapor, we are seeing a overall, it looks like a CDO developing here. Now, latest run there, you kind of see it looks like a CDO is developing. So I'm going to keep a really close eye on that and whether that is going to be signaling this is continuing to strengthen here and continue to overall see a really strong amount of moisture and overall amount of overall evaporation going on there within the actual IWA itself. So keeping the storm really strengthening as well. Here's now a look at the overall 5 o'clock advisory here of the National Hurricane Center, and there it is, obviously expected to become a major hurricane as early as tomorrow within the next less than 24 hours or so. Going to continue to see as a major throughout all the weekend into Tuesday and even Wednesday, continue to see as a major. So it's going to be a overall long track major hurricane here, which obviously is something you typically see in obviously the month we are in, September. And obviously, we're going to keep a close eye on Bermuda. They will most likely be in the very edge of the cone here once we get towards tomorrow, and it does get into the actual 5-day forecast. But based on this cone here, it looks like it's going to do what all the models are showing here. And obviously, as a result of that trough, kind of steering it kind of away from the actual further eastward or westward trend, as well the ridge kind of right here, kind of keeping the storm from going that way and kind of just keeping it as its trough or as its ridge advances northward. This low pressure itself will continue northward with it, and that's going to allow for this type of track here. And that's exactly why it's not doing like a floor, like a maybe Florence like that. That's why it's not going to do a Florence, because overall it's just not physically possible considering the trough and ridge we are currently seeing at this point. But overall, I'm going to keep a really close eye on Bermuda as it looks like it's going to get very close as a major hurricane. This could be like a, I guess you could say like a Paula 2.0 maybe. So here's now a look here at the Hurricane 12Z, Hurricane Larry 12Z. Overall tracks and minimal under pressure, and these are going to absolutely crazy now, seeing a ton. Actually seen a few models getting this actually below 940 millibars here, a few members getting that. But overall, the mean is getting this as low as 970 millibars as it goes up the overall northern Gulf Stream here, but likely to get within around 974 millibars before, or actually it's like at 979 millibars as it gets closer to Bermuda there. So it looks like it's going to be forecasted within the mid 970s. However, again, this is outdoing itself. These 12Z models are obviously pretty far behind than what the 18Z or even 0Z will look like. But overall, this is an overall look at the ensembles, and you can kind of see basically none have it actually hitting Bermuda and doing a pretty sharp northern turn, and then following the overall jet streaming, taking obviously at a very fast rate up the northern Gulf Stream. Here's now look at the overall 18Z actually model intended guidance here. So here's the latest 18Z, and of course this is a category 2 and likely to become a category 3 within the next 12 hours, to be as late as 24 hours. However, I wouldn't doubt this does become a category 3 by tomorrow within the next 24 hours. If it does go, obviously through an eye clearance after a diurnal maximum tonight. So overall, this is an absolutely beautiful storm. Obviously, it has a very overall decent concentrical overall outer eye wall, basically developing really strong outflow there. So this is just an absolutely beautiful storm. So this is expected to become a category 3, and then obviously even the National Hurricane Center has it becoming a category 4. So looking at an overall chance for 140 miles an hour. So really keeping a close eye on this. Obviously, it's a category 5 likely. I wouldn't say it's likely. However, again, I'm not saying it's gonna become a category 5. I don't think it will be. However, again, just gonna keep a close eye on it. However, I do think it will not surpass 145 miles an hour, and I think pretty reasonably 140 is the right track or the overall right peak. Here's now look at the overall ocean heat content. So obviously it's going to go to a little bit area of warmer and deeper ocean heat content, getting areas around 75 to around 90 meters with an 80 degree Fahrenheit water. So we're overall going to be going through some decent water actually, especially as it goes within the overall northeastern Caribbean vicinity there, getting in some scattered areas of over 100 meters of 80 degree Fahrenheit water. So overall, water-wise, pretty conducive environment. So before we get deeper into the actual models and deeper into the actual atmospheric conditions, I want you guys to pass run here of ASCAT. Obviously, this is rather old. However, again, the storm has obviously matured a lot more since this ASCAT run earlier today. However, again, this ASCAT obviously actually favored 80 knots, which is basically around over just above 80 or just above 90 miles an hour. Obviously, it's way stronger than that now. It's at 100. However, again, this is obviously still old, but it's showing you the overall structure. I mean, this thing is an absolute beautiful overall closed eye wall here, developing closed eye wall, really strong, obviously, southwesterlies here, then getting overall some, obviously, wrapping around, and then getting some easterlies, and then once again, getting some really strong southwesterlies. This is obviously a really strong overall inner core developing here, overall as well as developing, maturing eye wall. And overall, it's going through an eye wall replacement cycle. So if this does continue and this does clear up all the way, we could very well have a decent eye by tomorrow morning here, especially if it does go through during a maximum and it does get its overall better CDO. It should look a lot better by tomorrow morning. But again, really strong winds here, obviously. This is absolutely just overall mental storm here. Really strong winds, specifically centered across the northeast quadrant. Let's now get a look here at as well of the overall picture here of the convection itself here. So here's an overall look here at basically the 16 IR here. You can just see the overall structure of the system, just absolutely mental. I mean, it's a beautiful looking storm. You can kind of see a clear, obviously, amount of outflow channels developing here, some deeper convection as well, with some really deep convection developing and a closing eye wall here. It's not really fully symmetrical as of now, however, it is getting there, and it most likely will start to really strengthen on those eastern quadrants where it is lacking at this point. Let's take a look here. I believe we're looking at the overall 36. Actually, no, I don't think that's what we're looking at for. Or this, yeah, I think that's actually what we're going to be looking for. So yeah, here's another look here. Again, there you see the overall area of the low pressure itself here, and seeing some good amount of convection developing on the western quadrant. However, the eastern quadrant itself is lacking a little bit. However, it's likely to overall get its act together as it's expected right now, going through an eye wall replacement cycle. So overall, it's looking pretty good of a system as of now, and obviously, it's likely to get a lot better looking tomorrow morning. Same thing again. They're seeing really intense convection going on here as well. Some overall really cold cloud tops continuing to become obviously well seen here and well spread out across this overall low pressure, and obviously across specifically the western and northern quadrant as well. So many people are thinking, oh, this is obviously an MDR system, so shouldn't dry air be a pretty big problem? Well, no, dry air is not going to be a big problem at all. Actually, there's the low pressure itself. There's Larry, and there's actually basically no dust whatsoever in the MDR right now. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be a problem whatsoever. There is no dry air to really worry about whatsoever, especially even as it continues to go further northwest, where it's going to continue to just get better condition, and actually, this dry air is just going to completely fall apart. So, shouldn't be a big problem with this massive moisture bubble getting cut off. And even if there was intense dry air, it shouldn't be enough to really break this moisture bubble and trending moisture bubble, which is obviously being well seen and noticeable across, if you look at water vapor and overall the amount of precipitated water. This is a very strong developing CDO, so there's not going to be much of a threat with any dry air coming within this strong inflow. Let's not get a look at the overall GFS 12Z here. So there's the overall ridge here. There's the ridge itself. You can kind of see the overall strong steering here. Basically kind of wrapping around like that. Basically is what the National Hurricane was mentioning. Although it's kind of having a pretty large axis, it's still really still centered across north of the actual system itself here. That's obviously allowing the storm to not kind of go the way it typically would go in going straight into the MD or going straight into the Caribbean here. So as we continue though, as this ridge is obviously going to be rather weak here, you can kind of see an overall weak ridge here. It's not too crazy, so that's obviously why we're not seeing, if it were a lot stronger, but an actual ridge itself here, or if it was over here and it was a really strong ridge, we talking about really strong kind of easterlies, and that's going to obviously steer the storm directly towards the west here. However, again, this is a rather weak ridge. It's kind of centered just to the north of the actual system itself here. So it's going to be rather weak of a westerly, and it's just kind of just wrapping around like that, keeping the storm going basically northwestward. Obviously, if it were a lot stronger, we're talking about directly taking it just this way, or even doing a Florence here, but that's obviously not going to happen considering the trough we're talking about. GFS wants to get this to at 969 millibars by the next 66 hours, and then getting it to 972 hours, getting it 72 millibars, really close to Bermuda there. Look at 974 millibars, and that's basically really cutting it close to Bermuda there. So we may get a tropical storm watch likely within the Bermuda region here. So just keep it a very close eye on that though. Because obviously this is going to be something to keep a close eye on for Bermuda. Because although they may not get impact hit or straight up hit or direct hit, they're still going to get really some strong winds, possibly even some large waves. CMC though is still really dramatically under forecasting this storm. I mean, they had 993 millibars for the next 6 hours, and this is already 974. So they're basically 19 millibars behind already. So CMC's really far behind. The new icon actually just came out. It's the new 18Z icon. They're also extremely far behind. They're basically almost they're 900. They're basically here, well, like maybe 15, something like that, millibars behind. So they're also pretty far behind as well. Yet they still show a rather strong storm here, getting into 957, 952, 948 millibars. I mean, the icon rarely shows storms get this strong. I mean, they really don't like. I mean, the icon is definitely a model like the NavGen that really likes under forecast. So the fact that they're really going extreme here, and yet they're already basically 15 millibars behind, if they want it into the 940s, this is absolutely mental. To actually see if there's a overall, I mean, that's just an absolutely crazy storm there. It looks like the icon itself here is forecasting in rather bit of a teeny little bit stronger of a ridge there. So they kind of want to have it kind of go like, or actually they kind of want to have it kind of go like that then. I can draw right like that then instead of going like that. That's kind of what the CMC is showing here. And then there you see the overall, see an overall trough developing here across the overall United States here. That's obviously gonna really kind of just protect the storm from going anywhere close to the United States. Let's take a look at the overall H4 if you see what they're seeing here. And they also want to get this to around 957 millibars there. Obviously, they really want to get really strong here. Of course, the H4 wants a rather strong system. Looking at probably a Category 4 here. So Category 4 is really likely. Here's the overall 10-meter winds here. They want to get to a really max intensity of around 103 knots here. Yeah, 103 knots. Which, let's see here. That's basically, actually, I think 103 knots is even, I think 103 knots here. I think that's like 125 miles an hour maybe. So that's still a category. That's still a category 3 there, actually. So the H4 is still forecasting a high-end category 3. Let's now get a look at the overall GFS though, because they're also showing a pretty intense storm here. So they obviously having at 70 miles an hour now, which is still 30 miles an hour behind what it is now. And they don't actually get to the peak or to the actual strength it is now until, like, I don't think they even get it towards the peak the strength it is now. So the GFS doesn't even get Larry to the strength it is now. They don't even get it towards 90. They just get it towards, let's see here, 83, 86. Yeah, they don't even get it toward the actual strength it is now. The fact that GFS is getting really that stronger, you kind of see an overall really wobbly and elongated, looks like a really elongated low pressure here within the system. However, it's going to remain still rather symmetrical. However, it wobbles, like both sides of the eye wall will wobble. Most likely, we will see an eye wall replacement cycle kind of align for this two closed areas of eye wall developing for that clearing of the eye. But again, look at the DFS there for Bermuda. Make it 30 miles an hour sustained. We may get stronger. Just depends how close it gets. Let's actually get to the actual 10-meter wind gust, and let's see how that looks here for Bermuda here. This is actually 18Z. Let's go back to 12Z there. Let's now see what the GFS wants gust wise for the Bermuda area. They actually only want a gust of maybe 35 miles an hour for Bermuda. So it's actually not too crazy. However, again, if it does get a little bit closer, it could be a completely different story. Last but not least, here, let's now get a look at the overall reason for the steering here of this storm. So obviously there is the strong ridge there, right here to the right, high pressure, and there's the ridge, obviously north of the system. Overall strong upper level anticyclone there. I see those diverging clockwise flow. So overall pretty conducive environment at this point. And there you see the ridge continue to stay overall pretty north there of the overall system of Larry. It's going to continue to stay pretty to the far north there. Really strong ridge developing here. That's going to prevent it. Obviously, it's going to go through some really extreme vertical shear if it were to continue to go westward. It's obviously not even possible for it to go westward anyway because of that strong ridge preventing it. And as we do see a trough kind of developing here, really bringing in some really strong as well vertical shear across the east coast. And you kind of see that little dip right there. There's a trough right here, and so as well with the ridge right here, the high pressure, and the trough right here. It's going to be basically impossible for it to go for New England, Bermuda, or even Newfoundland. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.